all have opportunities to become what we want to become once we remain focused, and they enjoyed that. And in cutting the cake, the former principal, Pinder, celebrates her birthday at the same time, and this has been a long tradition, so she has always gotten the first piece of cake. And it's also been a tradition that, coincidentally, every year a student at Gambia Primary will also be celebrating their birthday at the same time, on the same date as both myself and Pinder. And that student is always given the second piece of cake. So that student had gotten the second piece of cake, and I must say, Madam Speaker, that they all enjoyed it. Madam Speaker, as a member of Parliament for Killarney constituency, I support the compendium of bills related to our criminal justice systems. I am always a supporter of initiatives by the government to make our justice system and law regime stronger. It is important for government and opposition to agree when possible on matters to improve the law, and the amendments before us today include Evidence Amendment Bill 2022, the Magistrates Amendment Bill 2022, the Juries Amendment Bill 2022, and the Criminal Procedure Code Amendment Bill 2022. And these bills, Madam Speaker, provide for a number of administrative and necessary changes. However, overall, it is important to note that these are all amendments designed to make our legal system function somewhat better. But these are not bills with a broader and more visionary scope to address crime and other pressing national issues. And this legislation does not appear to be a part of a broader and more comprehensive plan to make the Bahamas safer. These are functional bills. They chart no new territory or offer creative responses to the spiral of crime we are now facing, and which seems to keep getting worse. Madam Speaker, I have been stunned. The people of Killarney have been stunned. And Bahamians everywhere have been stunned by the government's abject and miserable failure to keep our communities safe. Last month was one of the most violent months in our country's history. This is not just my opinion. Deputy Commissioner of Police Clayton Fernandez said so in a briefing with the media on April the 7th. There were 22 murders in March, the police reported. There were also numerous shootings that left survivors with lifelong injuries, and the problem was mostly in New Providence. Some communities on this island are like conflict zones, and many residents are afraid to move around. 7 months into their term, and the administration of the member of Cat Island is overseeing a spectacular failure to keep Bahamians safe. While the Prime Minister was all over the place traveling with large delegations on very expensive trips in the early months of his term, things fell apart in our crime response. The man Bahamians entrusted with power to lead them and keep them safe has thus far failed in his most fundamental duty to our people. We the people could see things getting out of control. There were so many reports of crime and violence. And then, all hell broke loose. Sadly, the Prime Minister is often out of town, and perhaps He could not grasp or see what was happening on the ground because he's often traveling. He and his government seemed to have been caught off guard. It took the number of killings to reach record levels before the leader of the government intervened, bringing together stakeholders and trying to cobble together some type of response. The Prime Minister's failure to lead has helped to make a bad situation considerably worse. But this is not surprising. The government appears to have no comprehensive crime plan, no inflation plan, no plan for food crisis, no plan to deal with gas and energy costs. And these bills are only administrative adjustments. There are no new plans here. Madam Speaker, in normal times, it is fine to come to Parliament and make amendments. I repeat, in normal times, it is fine to come to Parliament and make amendments and administrative changes to laws as we are doing here today. The problem is, this government is making small changes at a time when the country needs a big and comprehensive crime plan. The lawlessness and killings, primarily in New Providence, are unacceptable. We need the government that said it had the answers to deliver now. What are they doing to get the guns off the streets? What are they doing to stop the young men and women, the young men, from shooting each other? What are they doing to break up the gangs? And what are they doing to make trials occur sooner? What are they doing to make our neighborhoods safer? And Madam Speaker, if you just listen to the noise on the streets, it would appear that the elements of crime are now moving from the inner city to the outer flanks, the east and the west. And one must be very cognizant of this. The Bayman people, especially the residents of New Providence, just don't want PR and spin. The people just want the Prime Minister's office, don't just want the Prime Minister's office to send out pictures pretending like something meaningful is being done. They want a plan that works. What is so sad in this New Day administration is this New Day administration is good at appointing PLPs to boards quickly. It is good at ensuring its supporters gets contracts quickly. We now have all kinds of ambassadors for all kinds of things. And the New Day government is very, very good at spending taxpayers' money, taking all kinds of people on trips all over the world. What this government is poor at is having a plan to make the lives of Bahamians better. When it comes to crime management, in the first 7 months of their term, they have earned an F grade. Sadly, Madam Speaker, it does not surprise Bahamians that the governing side has no clear and comprehensive crime policy. The other major issues facing Bahamians is the out-of-control cost of living increase, which could make the crime situation even worse. And just like with crime, the government has no plan to deal with inflation. In fact, the government has made inflation worse by adding new taxes to breadbasket foods and medicines. And Madam Speaker, individuals must now make choices because of the increase in medication, the increase of breadbasket items. They must, and compounded with the inflation, they must make choices as to whether they are to purchase medication to make them feel better or food which is natural for survival. This is a dangerous decision as it places great stress and strain on our already compromised healthcare system. The poor and working class are struggling just to get by. The World Bank stated in a blog on Monday, which read in part, and Madam Speaker, I will table that document afterward, and I quote, "A final but important concern is inequality. Inflation tends to hit the poor hardest, while better-off families have more instruments at their disposal to avoid the worst impacts. That's why inflation is likely to aggravate inequality." It further went on, "By some measures, Latin America and the Caribbean are already the most unequal regions in the world. Unfortunately, the rising prices we observe today might accentuate this situation, adding fuel to ongoing social tensions. Inflation and rising food costs can make our social situation and crime worse." I'm going to table it. "Even as most governments in the world are trying to tackle high food costs, this uncaring government added 10% to bread basket items."
The Chair recognizes the Honourable Member for Engliston.
Just on a point of order, the member for Killarney is citing at length.
I said
Yes, you can table it, but we'd like to know what you are referring to. We're entitled to know what you are quoting, where you're quoting from. If you could inform the House what you're quoting from, and then you can lay it.
It's a World Bank but in the interest of time.
World Bank report. Okay. All right. No, but we must know what you're quoting from. You can't just quote.
"This is making inflation and costs worse and higher for poor Bahamians and all Bahamians, including middle-class Bahamians. VAT on bread basket items, Madam Speaker, could add fuel to our problems and make our social tensions worse. This could cause greater inequality. We have a crime crisis, now connected to a growing food crisis. The slow action on the crime crisis and making the inflation and food crisis worse is a recipe for disaster. It is a disaster for which this government and this Prime Minister are responsible. The government also has no meaningful plan to deal with skyrocketing gas prices. Working people are having great difficulty filling their vehicles to get to work or to take their children to school. And this government does not even have the heart to lower the gas taxes to help the poor. This government also does not have the heart to remove its cruel new tax on bread basket items and medicines. Bahamians are battling the crime crisis and inflation crisis at the same time. And they have a government that is unwilling and unable to help them in more meaningful ways with either one. Madam Speaker, the Prime Minister is the leader of this government. He is the person primarily responsible for leading the crime fight. He has the authority, you know where I'm coming, to coordinate the various branches of the state. Whether we are being successful or failing depends on his leadership. And currently, we are failing, and failing miserably. The Honourable Member for Freetown is the Prime Minister's key person in crime fight. Unfortunately, he seems to be acting more like a criminal defense lawyer than as the Minister of National Security. He says whatever he wants, whenever he wants, instead of acting with greater collective responsibility. And during this growing crime crisis, the member for Freetown recently offended the entire country, including many women. with his ridiculous and insensitive remarks on the sentencing of a sex offender. In recent months, there were numerous stories in the media about crimes committed against women and girls. These were sickening crimes. Bahamians are rightly outraged. Yet the member for Freetown found it necessary to say several weeks ago that he thought the sentence given to a 40-year-old man was too severe for having sex with a girl who was just 14, Madam Speaker. I would not even get into women's groups condemned his remarks. The opposition condemned his remarks, and the opposition spoke out about it. The right-thinking Bahamians condemned what the Minister of National Security said, and there were calls for his resignation. Now, Madam Speaker, I do not like criminals. I think anyone who fools around with underage girls should be arrested, should be prosecuted, and given a long sentence. The comments by the member for Freetown were unbecoming of a member of cabinet, and even more unbecoming of the member of Minister for National Security. They caused great offenses. The Prime Minister should have fired the member from his cabinet. Instead, the Prime Minister defended him. In a story in the Tribune on Friday, April 8th, and I will table it, 2020, titled, I quote, Prime Minister, no need for Monroe to resign.
Honourable Member, you're quoting from the newspaper. Are you adopting?
Yes, I'm tabling, Madam Speaker.
Okay. You could table it. Are you adopting it?
Yes, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Member.
As for calls for Mr. Monroe's resignation, the Prime Minister said he didn't believe the situation warranted such a response. He said he has already expressed his regrets in my conversations with him, and if you hear what he has to say, it appears to be more about his personal view, and he has to come to learn as a young politician, that when he holds the post, as he does, his personal views may best be kept to himself. End quote. Those are the words of our Prime Minister. What kind of slack government is this? What kind of message does this send to the country? What kind of message does this send to the women and girls of our society? At a time of high-profile crimes against women and girls, at a time of high crime rates, we have a Prime Minister defending a Minister of National Security who wants to be softer on criminals. We are here debating, Madam Speaker, crime bills. We are legislators trying to find ways to make our justice system better. Yet, the Prime Minister is protecting a minister who wants to go easier on criminals. Prime Minister must do better than this. The Minister of National Security has lost the confidence of the Bahamian people. And Madam Speaker, he needs to go. The Prime Minister needs to find a new. And I look at the members' face, some are trying to pull their mask to hide it, they agree. The mask is hiding it, I understand. The Prime Minister needs to find a new National Security Minister to lead the crime fight. At the time of his appointment, many Bahamians were disturbed and shocked that the Prime Minister would recommend the member for Freetown as the Minister for National Security. I was pulling for you. Given his outlandish comments and how he has comported himself, the Prime Minister made the wrong judgment on his choice of Minister of National Security. But who am I to tell the Prime Minister what to do? I was pulling for you too. The minister's conduct reflects fully now on the Prime Minister, who recommended the appointment and who continues to support the member for Freetown in this critical position. Bahamians have no confidence in the Minister of National Security, in leading the crime fight and in protecting vulnerable people. Madam Speaker, I close with some questions for the government. Has Mr. Rodney Munker been hired as consultant on crime? You don't know yet. You're hearing it for the first time. If he has been hired, which ministry has he been hired to work for? You don't know yet either. Did the Minister of National Security want this appointment? I know you had held with that. What is Mr. Munker's role and his list of responsibilities and duties? The Bahamian public want to know. What are his expertise? How much is he being paid? And is he receiving other benefits? Is it $60,000 a year? Or is it $65,000 a year? And I don't ask questions I don't know. Is he getting housing allowance? Has he been given a car and receiving gas? Is he physically working out of a particular office? Does he have an office in the Ministry of National Security? Madam Speaker, we are in a major crime crisis. We need much more than small amendments. We need a comprehensive crime plan and a plan to address the cost of living and access to food. We may need a new food program to help the most vulnerable in our society. Sadly, so far, the PLP has given us public relations, a conclave, an attack by the Prime Minister on NGOs and Good Samaritans who helped provide food during the worst days of COVID. The hiring of God knows how many people of all kinds of for all kinds of contracts, and talk and more promises. But there seems to be no comprehensive plans by this out-of-touch, uncaring government to make us safer and to address the economic and food crisis we are in. Bahamians deserve and demand much better. Madam Speaker, the government should lead by example. The government should follow the law. How is it, Madam Speaker, that so many homes, and I agree, we need homes for people, I do not object. I do not object for building, ensuring that people have accommodations and homes. But how is it that homes could have been constructed, some up to roof level, in the south? You don't know yet, you're hearing this for the first time. Pinecrest area, but yet there was no approval from town planning. Does the law not require approval? Houses have been constructed. Is that the new norm? We build without approval? Or we build and then approve later? Now, Madam Speaker, no approval. Approval has since been submitted, but I won't go into any detail at this particular point in time. I will elaborate at a later time. My sister lives in the area, so I spend a lot of time in the area. I would have hoped that housing would have asked people in that community about the property, the given properties. It's a flood zone. I spent a lot of time there. It's a flood zone. Heavy rains, and I passed there during the last rain, and the waters were already settling between the houses. But, Madam Speaker, if you pass there, and I made an inspection, I made sure no one was around. I made sure no one was around. I made sure I put on my mask. And I made sure I put on my hat. And Madam Speaker, the houses, the blocks were laid like bow. But when you put the roughing on it, you camouflage the bow. There were no columns. Blocks were interconnected. No columns. No. There were no bell course. No, there were no bell course. This is an engineer. There's a particular word. There's a particular word they use for it. But there were no bell course. Madam Speaker, it's a setup for disaster. Flood and hurricane, those homes are problematic. I would urge belt beam, that's the word I was looking for. There were no belt beam. I would urge the minister, there were plans drawn up for that entire area by one of our former prime ministers under the F&M government. I would ask them to review such plans so that they would have a better idea of what was planned for the area and some of the problems that may have been encountered, and to seek again what was the opinion of the architect at that particular time. But, Madam Speaker, they're falling in the same trap as they did when they did the Carmichael subdivision. Carmichael subdivision, Madam Speaker, was built in flood zone again. Below sea level, at least 3-4 foot below sea level. 4 homes were already constructed. And when we came, we had to fill the entire area up to bring it to street level. Go and view the area. The 4 homes that were constructed in 2015 by the former government have to be demolished because they were in flood zone. They are no good. 4 homes. And I can tell you who built it and everything, but we'll get to that at a later date. Pinecrest, I have no objection. But at least we have to set an example. We cannot build homes without approval. Town planning has a system. And we cannot build homes without having the necessary infrastructure, knowing that the area is flood. Let's do it right. Let's do it right and put in the necessary brains so as to deal with it so that people stand a better chance. Let's do well course. Let's do the columns so that the homes can withstand hurricane. Don't put them in. You know, I was reading the other day, what is it? The 3 little pigs where the fox came out, blow your house away. Not let's go back. Don't go back to the 3 little pigs. It's 3 little pigs, eh? Madam Speaker, but I would speak to these matters at great length. But I support the amendments. Madam Speaker, I thank you very much, and you look so radiant up there today. May God continue to bless you. Madam Speaker, have a great and blessed day.
Another half hour like that.